Hey, what's up? So today I'll be working on the UDR again, and in this video I'll be installing the Installing Max6 speed controller along with these XT90 connectors using this XT90 adapter. I'm also going to be wiring in the lights to be always on since they don't work with this speed controller. Before I install the new speed controller, I need to see how much voltage is going to these lights. That way I can wire it into the receiver as long as it's around 6 volts. I'll be removing this power amplifier and I'll be running the voltage straight to the wires through the receiver. I won't have the functioning brake lights anymore, but I'd rather have the better speed controller that can also run ADAS if I ever want to. I'll just start by cutting off the zip ties. So these regular meter leads are a little too big, so I'll be using this back probe, which is a lot smaller, to get in there. And I just want to get in here to check the voltage. Okay, so that's actually putting out about 15 volts on one wire and 10 volts on the other wire. So that is not going to work how I thought it would. So I was working on this for quite a while, trying to figure out what to do with this. With the voltage being so high going to these LED lights, it won't be able to be plugged into the receiver because that's only about 6 volts. I tried running 6 volts to these LEDs and they did not turn on, so it does need the full voltage. I checked the voltage on each of these wires coming out of the speed controller for the amplifier, and some of the wires have 3 volts coming out, some have 6, and some have 9. I wouldn't be able to directly plug this into the receiver with any of these wires either. I did try connecting 12 volts directly to these wires to see if they would turn on, and that will work out. I just have to connect both black to the negative and the blue to the positive. What I'm going to do instead is this Castle BEC. This will put out 12 volts. I just ordered this right now, so I'll be using this directly wired to each of these LEDs. So I programmed this to put out 12 volts, and I'll be wiring this into the batteries. I won't be plugging this into the receiver because that will damage the receiver. Instead, I'll just be using this wire, and I will plug these directly into the LEDs. That does mean that the LEDs will come on as soon as I plug in the batteries though. Okay, I disconnected this. I'm just going to remove the speed controller and the amplifier. So I'm just going to cut all these connectors off, and I will install these. That way I can disconnect them if I ever have an issue in the future. For the two in the front, they have this splitter, and I'm just going to connect it right to this piece right here. Okay, so I stripped the wires. I'm going to put these two black wires together since they're going to the same connection anyways. Putting some heat shrink on here. And what I like to do is twist the wires together before I solder them. That way it has a better connection. Just like that. so I'm going to do that on all the rest of the lights. So I have all these 3 light bars wired up. I'm going to cut off the end of this BEC and I'm going to solder on these connections, all 3 of them, to hook up to this. Okay, so that's all done. I can go ahead and connect these, and I'll just do a quick test. This probably isn't the safest way to check it, but it'll work. Okay, so it looks like they all turned on. Okay, now I can start to wire in the speed controller. So to connect this BEC, I'm going to strip a center section of this wire instead of connecting it at the same spot as the connector, because this wire barely fits in here as it is, and adding another wire wouldn't fit. Easiest way to strip a section that I've found is using these style wire strippers. And I'll just twist this wire around here. Okay, now I can install the heat shrink on here. Alright, so that's done. Now I can go ahead and install the XT90 connectors, and I'll be using this XT90 adapter. They also sell these in an EC5 adapter if you use those connectors. And these are all 3D printed. Now that's done, I can go ahead and install the positive on here. Okay, to fit the XT90 connectors on the chassis, you need to grind away right here around the edge just to make this opening a little bit bigger on both of them. As you can see, it just doesn't quite fit in there, so there's a little bit you have to grind off, mostly on this smaller one in the front, or on this one. Alright, so I'll start grinding that away. Alright, just test fit it. It's almost in there. That's like a little bit on the bottom needs to come off. Okay, so they fit in there now, and I'll be able to hook up the batteries, no problem. I can install the speed controller now. I'll just be using this double-sided tape that the speed controller comes with. And this adapter will just mount right into where the old location was, using the same screws. I'm going to mount this switch onto the speed controller itself, right in the back. Right in the back like that. So it gives me easy access to turn it on and off. These motor wires just barely connect. The cable for the speed controller to the receiver is just too short, so I have to use an extension. This is the only extension I have at the time. It's actually a splitter, but it'll still work. I always run a small capacitor for the steering servo, and I just put down the second channel for channel 1. And I just run that so there's never a shortage of power for the servo. I just need to run the wires over to the BEC, and I'm just going to mount this on this part of the roll cage because that's the only spot where the wires will reach. Alright, so all the wiring's done on that. Alright, so I have all the electronics done. I have another upgrade I'm going to be doing to it, so I'm going to leave it apart for right now. Please like and subscribe. Thank you.